Hello, everyone. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting. It would really help the channel out quite a bit. Thank you very much.
The Spine Chillers, a new series of 5 plays. Anna Massey, Michael Bilton, and Blaine Fairman in Figures by Colin Hayden Evans.
Let me put it this way. It's a marriage of convenience only insofar as my convenience is concerned. I won't give you a divorce because I don't want a divorce. It's that simple. I find you a perfectly useless wife, but, rather surprisingly, an excellent mother. Rebecca needs us both, so you will stay. You'll always stay, unless I change my mind. If you leave me, I will gain custody of Becky. You can be sure of that. And when I do, you will never see her again. You can go to as many lawyers as you like, and they to as many courts, but you will never see her again. Believe me. You're an infant, Anne. Just a kid in the games people now play. I grew playing those games, which is why I always win.
Sorry. I'm sorry. What did you say?
Your husband's Canadian. I was wondering if your husband was Canadian.
Yes. Canadian.
Following on later, then?
Is it much further, Mr. Fuller?
If you bend your head a little, you can just see it through the trees.
Do you think you might stop?
Sorry? Oh, yes. Yes, of course. It's a good view from here, actually. You can't see the outbuildings, but...
How long has it been empty?
Oh, getting on for 18 months. Mrs. Harding lived there before for years.
She lived alone?
As far as I know.
She didn't need all the rooms, then?
Most of them hardly need any attention. We have made an allowance.
Did she live upstairs?
She was getting on a bit. I think she preferred...
Not to?
I expect so. Right. Shall we go on? It's a very reasonable price to ask for a house of this size, actually. Especially as it comes partly furnished. She had no one left, you see. We're handling it for the executors. The door's locked, I'm afraid. We can't find the key. I'm afraid it's locked, Mrs. Simons.
It is a very reasonable price, Mr. Fuller. I mean, it's unreasonably reasonable.
Oh, a realistic figure, I'd say.
Considering?
I'm sorry?
That you can't sell it?
Oh, we will sell it.
It's only fair to say that I have every intention of buying it. But I would be grateful if you told me, well, shall we say, what you'd first decided to keep to yourself.
Mr. Simons...
The house will be bought in my name. No mortgage will be required.
Ah. Well, it's what you'd call a bit different.
Different?
There's always some that like to look at it that way. I can't say I do.
What are we talking about, Mr. Fuller? What do you mean a bit different?
It varies. Mostly hearsay, really.
We mean haunted, don't we?
It's a point of view, of course.
But you have an open mind.
I've been a Baptist all my life, Mrs. Simons.
What was in the locked room? Is that where it happened? She was frightened.
No. Well, you wouldn't stay if you were, would you?
Couldn't we force the lock?
Oh, well, now,
I'll be happy to leave the deposit with you this afternoon, Mr. Fuller.
It's a heavy door.
But you'll try.
Well, it's as you see.
Yes. Yes, I know.
Yes, I guess it was the money. It was the best thing you had to offer. Oh, don't tell me you didn't realize. It wasn't as if I paid you that much attention. People have always been unkind to you, haven't they, Anne? But then that's what you want, isn't it? That's what makes it so enjoyable for them.
Every night?
No, just sometimes.
What sort of noises?
Well, I never went into it, to tell you the truth. She used to tell my sister about it mostly. That's how I heard. They were quite friendly, Marjorie and Mrs. H. Shared an interest in African violets, you see. Marjorie's always been one for the African violets.
Did she ever see anything? Mrs. Harding?
Kept the door locked. Hardly went upstairs. No, I don't think she ever saw anything. Mrs. Simons, do you mind if I ask you something?
Why I want to buy the place?
You were right, you know. I can't sell it.
That's really rather honest of you, Mr. Fuller. You don't want me to buy it.
Somebody has to, I suppose.
Especially not me, would you say?
Well, you knew about it, didn't you? The others, they found out, you see. Half the village always fell over itself to tell them. But you, well, you seem to...
No one came to any harm, did they?
How do you mean?
There was only the noises.
Oh, yes. No, it didn't harm anyone, as far as I know. I suppose it's just a way of looking at it, isn't it? If you're not bothered, well, it's all right, I suppose.
When there's nothing left between two people, or perhaps simply nothing to begin with, it creates a kind of space. I know you feel that too, Anne. We both live there now, don't we? Me, comfortably, you, anything but. You feel guilty about not caring, you see. That's your problem. You feel you should care, if only for Becky's sake. But you can't. Your disgust won't let you, so you pretend. You lay with me at nights, whispering your lies, so that the days that follow will be more tolerable. Not for me, of course. Never for me, just for you. And Becky, you think you have to keep me happy. There's no need, Anne. There really isn't. The very last thing I would ever want from you is actual happiness.
And this will be yours. Tell me what you can see from the window.
Lots of trees. Almost all the way up to the sky.
Oh, this will be your window.
Where will yours be, Mummy?
In my room, of course.
Not far away.
No, down the hall past the old painting on the wall.
The one we have to clean.
The one we have to clean.
Will Daddy come soon?
Yes.
Will he have the same room as you?
Of course he will. It'll be just the same as it was in Toronto.
He used to make noises. In Canada.
What?
At night. He used to make noises. Daddy.
You shouldn't have been listening.
It was only when he was asleep. When I went to the bathroom sometimes, I heard him.
Becky, it was a dream. Either Daddy was dreaming or you were. Well, when people dream, they sometimes do make funny noises.
As if he was drowning. Inside his mouth.
Becky,
like
you and I are going to do some cleaning starting right now. Come on.
You could sleep with me in here, if you like.
If you want me to.
No, all the time, I mean.
And what would Daddy say? Don't suppose he'd want a room all to himself.
Why is your door broken? Mummy? Why do you want to sleep in a room where the door is all broken?
I'm sorry if I seem... Well, I take an afternoon nap, you see. Have to watch the old blood pressure. Take it easy, as they say. Basically, you have to stop living in order to preserve what's left. Please sit down, won't you?
Thank you. I shouldn't have called without warning. I'm sorry if I startled you.
I don't get many visitors. Perhaps chat with the postman a bit, usually about the state of this season's garden compost. And that can be it for the day sometimes.
Did you practice in this area for your entire career, Dr. Sage?
And my father before me. He died in harness. I've not been so lucky. Can I offer you some tea, perhaps?
I really only came to introduce myself. We're each other's sole neighbours, after all. I'm sorry. Have I said something? You were staring.
You bought the place, then? The house?
Yes. We hope to move in properly when my husband arrives. He's in Canada at the moment. The previous owner, Mrs. Harding, I understand she lived at the house alone. You were her doctor, weren't you?
Yes.
She lived on the ground floor only.
She was arthritic. I advised her not to tackle the stairs.
Can I ask you a direct question? Would you mind? What I mean actually is, will you give me a direct answer? You won't ever visit us, will you? You've no intention of setting foot in that house again.
Fuller told you that?
He said only that you'd heard, well, what people do here.
I can't claim uniqueness on that score. Quite a few had. Peggy Harding lived with it for years.
She didn't mind? She didn't mind?
It ceased to be a problem for her. I mean, if your central heating plays up occasionally, you don't turn a hair, do you? It's only the not being able to put a name to the noise that disturbs. Unease is often due to no more than a lack of adequate explanation, don't you think? Besides which, her hearing wasn't up to much.
Fuller said you saw them. He said you went up to the room. The noises were particularly bad that night. Mrs. Harding had phoned you. He said you saw them.
And you are suggesting that I shouldn't have believed what I saw?
No, I didn't say that.
You know, as a doctor, you become quite familiar with the fact that people can, given the circumstances, see things that aren't actually, well, real, shall we say. Put enough gin down someone for a set number of years and you'll produce the effect beautifully. It rather depends what we mean by real, I suppose. I've often wondered, is it real because we see it, or is the reality lying there, waiting to be discovered?
I don't know.
Of course you don't. Who does?
But you believe what you saw.
What I saw left me little choice, Mrs. Simons. Frankly, I'm not sure I quite understand your interest. I mean, you knew about it all before you bought the house, presumably. It reduces itself to merely keeping the door locked, surely, permanently, as Peggy did. One room less in a house of that size is not really that much of an inconvenience, I would have thought.
I'm sleeping in the room.
Mrs. Simons, what do you want?
I know the house. It's no great mystery. Since a child, I've had a recurring dream of a particular house. Well, not very often, though it has increased over the past couple of years. I came to know it very well. It never seemed very strange to me.
Your house?
My house.
Did you dream the house was...
In a way. Inhabited, I suppose, would be the best way of... by things that had to happen. A sense of inevitability. Not because I, or anyone else for that matter, would decide anything particularly, but things happening for themselves. I think things can become their own reason sometimes. I suppose that sounds odd.
Would you think me awfully rude if I asked you to leave now? I get these funny turns, you see. It's better when I lie down. I'm afraid your only neighbour tends to be a bit crotchety. You'll forgive me, I know.
Yes, I see. May I call again?
No, Mrs. Simons, I don't think so.
I don't understand.
Neither do I, frankly.
What did you see in that room?
I have asked you to leave on the pretext of a perfectly feeble excuse that both of us realize has nothing at all to do with what I actually mean. It was an attempt to preserve courtesy, Mrs. Simons. If you take that from me by your continual insistence, I shall be reduced to rudeness, and that is something I would genuinely regret.
But what has been said? Yes, I see. I'm sorry, Doctor.
You come back, don't you? Don't you? You pretend you don't want me to hurt you, but that is exactly what you want. You crawl around on the floor, but never towards the door. Come on! Come on! There's plenty left. Get up, huh? Get up!
Don't do it again.
But you don't want it to stop, Anne. You see that, don't you? You plead with me for escape, but you'd kill me if I ever let you go. Oh, that's it, isn't it? Of course. Your festering little secret. You want me to kill you, don't you?
Yes?
Simons. Alex Slade.
Oh,
3 things, really. Firstly, an apology for my boorishness the other day. No excuses, just the apology. Ill-mannered and no two ways about it. Secondly, any chance of getting called Alex, do you think?
you know...
Depends pretty much on whether the apology washes, I suppose. Finally, what about a spot of dinner somewhere to make suitable amends?
I think we should share the apology, Dr. Alex. I was visiting largely on false pretenses.
Yes, you were. But thinking it over, I'm not so sure you had all that much choice, really. Dinner will get you a better explanation.
I can't leave Rebecca, I'm afraid.
Lunch, then?
Couldn't you come out here to supper? You won't come to the house.
If I can call you Anne, it's a deal.
Tonight, then. About 6.
Well, I haven't the slightest idea what I've just eaten, but it was the best meal I've had in years.
It was a Moroccan recipe, actually.
Good God. Well, never mind.
Seemed rather odd to be laying a table that wasn't my own. Even the cutlery was Mrs. Harding's.
Funny little tablecloths she always had, Peggy. Her mother made them, you know. Crochet or something. Never fitted anything. Used to train dogs.
Mrs. Harding?
Her mother. Kerry Blues, sort of large terrier. The place used to stink to high heaven. The garden's full of them, you know, buried them all over the place. Funny woman. Had a lot of shares in Russian railways or something. Wouldn't talk about it much. Pre-revolution, you see. Lost the lot.
We jumped off on rather the wrong foot, didn't we, Alex? I'm genuinely sorry for my part.
Same here. Oh, there's still a good half bottle to go. Shall we finish it, do you think?
I won't for the moment.
Oh.
Are we going to be completely frank with each other?
I expect so. It would be difficult to be much else on this vintage.
When we first met, I asked you...
I think I must ask you something first. It'll probably sound a bit, well, personal. You just have to take it on trust that it might have some bearing on what you want to know. Are you happily married, Anne?
My marriage is like sitting in a very cold room. A room made empty by another's company. I will have that glass of wine.
Ah, good.
Is that all?
I polished off the rest, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
Is that all you want to know?
Oh. You've slept here?
I've been sleeping in the room, yes. You know that.
And?
Nothing. Nothing has happened, Alex. I've slept more soundly than I can ever remember.
When is your husband...
Next week. I don't have the exact date yet.
What then do you want to know from me?
What you saw, I suppose.
I'd gone to bed fairly early. Ruthie, my wife, had stayed up because the cat had gone missing or something.